Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's no additions to the agenda.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Councillor Hendricks.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
In favor.
That carries unanimously. All right, so on the consent agenda tonight, we have 3 items. So at this time, I'd like to move the council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 4A, special council meeting, August 23rd, 2018 minutes. Item 4B, regular council meeting, August 28th, 2018 minutes. And item 4C, special committee of the whole from August 30th, 2018 minutes as presented. Call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
Councillor Hendricks? Oh, there we go. Carries unanimously. Which brings us to item 5A. We have one public hearing on the agenda tonight for bylaw 926-18, the Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan. Mr. Wong. Just one. So at this time, I'd like to declare the public hearing open, and the hearing is being held pursuant to sections 23606 and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. Ms. Winter, would you like to speak to the public hearing?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. The purpose of bylaw 926-18 is to adopt the Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan. The notice of the public hearing was given in writing to all registered landowners, Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan area, adjacent landowners, and Leduc County applicable agencies. The public hearing notice was advertised in the local newspaper on August 31st and September 7th, 2018. Any written submissions received are included in the agenda package, and there is nothing to read into the record at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so as we move into the public agenda, I'd like to ask that all persons giving oral presentations to please clearly state your name and keep your presentations brief and to the point. So at this time, I would like to ask Mr. Wong to speak on behalf of Integrated Growth.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. The department received an application for the Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan. Elan is located west of Range Road 243 and north of 50th Avenue. The Elan NSP provides the planning and servicing framework for a specific area and must comply with the area structure plan. The Elan NSP is approximately 65.3 hectares, about 1/4 section, and proposes a variety of land uses including low and medium density residential, commercial, and urban village, and open spaces and parks. This plan also provides land for a school to meet the community need to accommodate projected student populations. The school site is designed to be expanded in the future to allow additional field space and a second school. The neighborhood structure plan intends to accommodate a population of 36,000 people with a density of approximately 43 dwelling units per net residential hectares. The Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan is in alignment with all higher level plans and policies, including the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan, Beaumont Municipal Development Plan, and the Elan Area Structure Plan. As a member municipality of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, new neighborhoods in Beaumont must meet all the requirements of the growth plan, including a density of 35 dwelling units per net residential hectare, to ensure that growth within the region is responsibly managed through compact and contiguous development. Administration is recommending approval of this plan as it meets a variety of community needs and is in compliance with all higher level plans and policies. The Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan will help Beaumont to continue to grow into a complete community that provides a variety of options and amenities to its residents. Various stakeholder meetings were held with adjacent landowners and the school boards by the applicant during the plan development stages. The applicant also held a public meeting on June 20th, 2018 at Ken Nicol Regional Recreation Center. The application was also circulated to affected boards and agencies as well as civic departments for comment. No outstanding concerns regarding this application was received. Public notices were sent to Nadeau County agencies and adjacent landowners regarding this public hearing and was advertised on August 31st and September 7th. No concerns were received as to date. So the public hearing was also posted on our website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from members of council for administration? Okay, seeing none, is there a representative of the applicant wishing to speak tonight? Sorry? It's all working, yeah?
Before I begin, I'm safe to assume that this clicker will change the slides, yes?
I hope so.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so good evening, Your Worship and Council. Thanks for the vine. My name is Ryan Eidick. I'm the Manager of Planning with Invista Consulting. Here representing Dream Development to talk about the Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan. I feel very close to you. Is this table closer than it used to be?
It's a little bit.
Okay.
We have a large crowd tonight.
I'm gonna crane my neck from side to side.
All right.
Okay. Next to me here is Kaylin Stark. She's also a planner with Invista Consulting. She's actually the one that put together the NSP document and actually the formal application. And this is her first time sitting up at the head table, so as you can tell, she's very excited. We also have representatives from Dream Development here, as well as members of the project team with different backgrounds, including transportation, engineering, urban design, planning. So pretty much any question or comment that you may have at the end, one of our squad can answer. I'm going to keep my presentation short and hopefully very sweet, simply focusing on the history of the project, the concept and its details, the phasing of the development, aka the question on everyone's mind, and demonstrate how the plan meets all the overarching documents. So I'm sure most of you remember 2017 very fondly, albeit for different reasons than we did. So the annexation, of course, was approved in 2017, bringing in 21 new quarter sections into Beaumont. 8 of those quarter sections were located west of the then town boundaries and are now simply known as Elan. And the reason that they are known as Elan is because the area structure plan for Elan was approved in November of 2017, very shortly after you all were voted in. Following the approval of the area structure plan, the project team began working on the neighborhood structure plan, which took us the majority of 2018. Going back and forth with the administration to ensure compliance with both the town's evolving statutory documents as well as the new town vision. And over the summer of 2018, we did host an engagement event, as Mr. Wong alluded to, on what I can only describe as the hottest day of the year in June of 2018 in the Ken Nichols Recreation Center in the atrium. We also met with some individual landowners adjacent to the property in a more intimate setting and presented the information to them directly. So overall, everything took about a year to this point. Our first submission was made in April of 2018, and following some back and forth with administration, as well as some feedback from the engagement events, we did submit our final submission in August of 2018, and that's what you see before you today. The overall concept remains the same as what was approved in the area structure plan, so just for reference, that's what's shown there. There's a little bit more detail on this map than what was approved, obviously, because we just photoshopped it in. We just photoshopped the neighborhood structure plan concept in there. But this is what the neighborhood structure plan concept generally looks like. It remains consistent with ASP, as Mr. Wong alluded to. It has an overall density of 43 dwelling units per net residential hectare. It'll bring in about 3,700 people, including about 830 students. The highlights also include a diversity of land uses, which I'll get to in a second, and it is largely focused on connecting residents throughout this neighborhood, the rest of Elan, and Beaumont as a whole. The plan's almost entirely residential in nature, so this plan might be a little bit difficult to see, but there's 3 areas for housing. The first being in yellow, the LDR, low-density residential. This will be primarily made up of single and semi-detached housing. MDR in brown, medium density residential, these are your typical condo and apartment sites. And the urban village, there'll also be some residential in there. This is, I'll give more details in a second, but this is basically a mixed use node that has a variety of residential densities, or a variety of residential uses at higher densities, so apartment sites and in mixed use formats. Population breakdown, the majority of the neighborhood and the majority of the residents will be coming from the low density residential component. There's only one commercial area located and planned for the area, and that's for the neighborhood, and that's located in the southeast corner. This is consistent with both the municipal development plan as well as the Elan area structure plan. And it'll be a typical vehicle-oriented commercial center due to its location with good access and visibility along major arterial roadways. The urban village, as I mentioned before, it's a node that blends residential, commercial, institutional, and public land uses together in a central gathering space. So the area is intended to be higher density in terms of residential land uses and also lower intensity for commercial land use, or for non-residential land use. So what that means is you won't see too many big box stores, but rather smaller scale commercial development in this area, serving or providing goods and services for the day-to-day needs of the residents of Elan. Connections is obviously king in this neighborhood, and the urban village uses an existing pipeline corridor south of 50th Avenue to connect the east and west sides of the area. So before I get into that, though, the first thing you'll notice is that most of the buildings in the urban village node do face the curved street. And now, sorry, I'm just going to go back. I can't go back. There we go. So only half of the urban village is actually in our plan area, but we did include an overall concept for the entire thing to show what it could look like at full build out. So now I'll jump right back in. So most of the buildings are focused towards the street. So with parking located internally, and most of these buildings are intended to be mixed use, so commercial or office on the main floor, and then residential or offices above, that type of thing. There might be standalone residential or commercial or office developments, but for the most part, they are intended to be mixed use. All of them will be facing the outer ring road, with the intent of creating a pedestrian-oriented atmosphere along that street. Again, the greenway down the middle, this uses the existing pipeline corridor south of 50th Avenue and connects to the east to Eaglemont, to the west to East Vistas, which sounds weird to say, and then also there's accesses to the north and to the south to both school sites that are planned for the Elan neighborhood. So connectivity, one more time, was king, and especially in the urban village where we want people to congregate and around a central community area. Once again, I'll state it again, the primary focus is connecting residents to community amenities using off-street systems. So this is obviously safer for students, especially that are walking to school, but it also gives the neighborhood a level of connectivity that aims to reduce the overall car dependency for residents of Elan. The central location of the park was integral, as it means that no resident in this neighborhood is further than 400 meters or a 5-minute walk from a park space. And then once in the park space, there are connections throughout that'll take you to the rest of to existing neighborhoods in Beaumont as well as the rest of Elan. So here's a concept for what is being proposed. This is on page 25 of the NSP document for those of you following along. And as discussed, it features primarily trails connecting the different amenities. So this is a highlight of all the trails. And then these are all the amenity nodes. All the amenity nodes there's proposed to be a variety of amenities along this way. So more traditional parks and playgrounds, and also some more contemporary park design, like the image that we have here, which is an outdoor fitness facility. So yeah, Muscle Beach Beaumont really rolls off the tongue. So without trying to sound like an infomercial and saying, wait, there's more, there's actually more. Our proposal also includes a skating trail that would render the park spaces usable year round. So this could also be supplemented by smaller skating areas in some of the amenity spaces along the way that allows for a variety of winter skating activities as well as festivals to take place. So to wrap up the parks discussion, the intent is to have some sort of usability year-round, as well as provide some space for a variety of different park types. The inclusion of public art into these spaces is also being promoted in the NSP, which is something that DREAM is actually very passionate about, and this is highly encouraged in both the MDP and the ASP as well. Staging, the phasing of development in this area is now shown on the screen. It's page 49 of the NSP for Councillor Monkoff-Swain. It'll commence from the intersection of 53rd Avenue and Range Road 243, so that's the entrance going into Eaglemont Heights. Development will start there and then fan out to the northwest and the southwest from there. It's difficult to predict with any degree of accuracy how long it'll take to develop the entire NSP area, but I can tell you that the first phase will have the following timeline. So should the NSP be approved as shown, zoning will be the next thing that takes place, and of course council will be hearing that application in 2 weeks on the 25th of September. Following zoning being implemented, DREAM can begin reaching out to builders and start preparing a subdivision application. Development will begin in 2019 with the first houses and landscaping in 2020. And depending on, of course, how the first phase is received in the market at the time, further development phases could occur in quick succession after that. Plan conformance, I'm not really going to talk too much about that because I think Mr. Wong captured most of it, but we do exceed most of the, or all of the EMRB requirements and targets. We're in line with the MDP and also the Elan ASP, which is good because that would be embarrassing. We were the ones that put it together. So once again, I'd like to take the time to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak, and I'll open it up to any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Lots of info, lots to digest. Are there questions from members of council? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Hello. Through yourself to the presenters there. Thank you very much. One comment and then a couple questions. You sounded like you had some horsepower behind you for a little bit more in-depth questions if we needed to get there. I'll try to try not to go that deep, but the skating trail I thought was really cool. I noticed that during when I was reviewing through, and I think that's pretty cool. First question, can you speak to how it's determined how many school sites are allocated in a given area during planning? In section 3.5 there, the school section in the document you just blazed through, it states that there's a portion of a school site included in the plan. I've had a couple of residents ask about school sites and the portion of. Just wondering if you can speak to that and kind of educate us a little bit on that. Sure.
Through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, first of all, thank you. Second of all, so during I actually have a figure here. Just one moment, showing the school site. But first, how it's determined. So at the area structure plan level, we actually went out and met with all the school divisions. So Black Gold, the Stars Catholic, and then the Francophone School Division to make sure that just to kind of see where their capacity were, or what their existing capacity was with their existing schools, what they were looking at for new schools in the future and that type of thing. And then we worked with administration to provide enough land for all of them. So that was done at the area structure plan level. It wasn't so much done here. We're just implementing that vision. Now, in terms of the school site itself, pardon me. There it is. Okay, so that right there in the red box, that is the portion of the site that is actually on Dream lands. The rest of it is on adjacent landowners' lands. So the intent was that the school site would be balanced between all of the residents and be central to the community. The reason for doing it this way was this school is intended for either Black Gold or Stars. Neither of them needed a school right away. Only when the neighborhood started to develop. So this enables the school building to start construction while the accumulation of the other lands begins. So this site is only actually good for one school.
Cool. Follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Economic development is an important mandate of the council. You spoke to it a little bit, but can you speak to how planning this NSP leads to a low percentage of available commercial land use?
Sorry, through your worship to the councillor again. Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I was trying to write it down.
Yeah, you bet. Around economic development. Economic development is an important mandate of this council. Can you speak to how planning this NSP has led to a low percentage of available commercial land use? You spoke to it a little bit in your intro, but maybe if you could just elaborate on, the not big pieces of land, but more small, maybe intimate or something.
Okay. Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk again. So again, this was done at the area structure plan level. So economic development internally, we did commission a retail market analysis at the time at the area structure plan, and that determined basically how and where and what types of commercial uses should be provided. And the majority of that was actually dedicated on the south portion of the area structure plan level. So, sorry, can you find that figure?
Yep.
Yeah. It should be in the presentation somewhere, but I'm trying to find the area structure plan figure here to show you, but the majority of the commercial uses are located along major arterial roadways, so Highway 625, 510, and then 243 is the major location. So internal to the site, there's not really a lot of demand or need for larger format retail, so that would be the only retail that you'd find in this NSP area is through the urban village and smaller scales, which is more day-to-day. today, and then the one commercial site. Now, as the neighborhood further develops, there is going to be a need for more commercial areas, and that's where the stuff along 625 will start to develop, as well as the stuff along 510, which I'm going to conclude here before we even get to the figure I was talking about. But yeah, just to summarize that, we believe there is ample. Fantastic. So everything along the southern part there in the purple and the red, that's all commercial and office. And then the red along 510 in the north, those are both commercial parcels as well. So there will be ample commercial spaces, and it was developed through this retail market analysis report that we commissioned.
Cool. Good, thank you.
Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Rydick, thank you for the presentation. As you know, Beaumont's part of the Edmonton Regional Metropolitan Area regarding densities. The ELAN, as you mentioned in the presentation, has a 45 unit per square residential hectare. Does that, I know it complies, but is that more dense than what was required, or less dense, or on par what it should be?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Daniluk, that's higher. So the requirement for Beaumont is 35 units per net residential hectare, so we're at 43, so we are exceeding it a little bit. Now, the reason for that, of course, is most of it is the urban village. There's a higher density residential component there, so it actually jacks up the density quite a bit for this area, but over the entire neighborhood, so the entire Elan area structure plan, the entire Elan neighborhood, it'll have 37 dwelling units per net residential hectare, so it'll balance out over the course of development.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to the Elan presenters. I'm sorry, was it Mr. Idek and Miss Stark? Stark. Okay, thank you. I like thank you for the presentation. I like a lot of what I'm seeing here. I'm particularly impressed with the urban village concept, although I have to say I think the success of that absolutely depends on good walkability and access through trails and pedestrian pathways. And then and also that those link into the trail system as well. And I notice if I can draw your attention to page 59 of 235 in my package, which is figure 13, active transportation network. The trails are shown, but they are listed as potential multi-use trail. I'm just wondering why they're potential. Are we not committing to doing these?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Stout, it's not that we're not committed, it's that as soon as you start not using the word potential, the locations and the type of path can change. So we're leaving it open to, the town has their own Parks and Recreation people that would look at what types of trails are most useful in this circumstance. So once development starts occurring and the landscape starts developing, then it'll be determined what the best kind of trail is. So it's not that there won't be a shared use path there, it's just kind of what the materiality will be, what kind of, what the location will be and that type of thing.
Thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? Fair enough. Thank you very much once again. Great presentation. Is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor of the bylaw? Is there anybody here tonight that wishes to speak in opposition to the bylaw at hand? Is there any person here this evening that deems themselves to be affected who wishes to be heard? This is your last chance to talk. All right, at that time, we will declare the public hearing closed, and we will move on to the next item on the agenda. Okay, just before we move on to registered presentations and we get into the business of the night, we had normally I wait till the end and councillor statements, but I'm going to exercise some prerogative and jump the queue. Today I had the honor of actually signing the agreement with the Duke County for the sponsorship dollars that they're going to give us, the $2.4 million, and the operational dollars for the Aqua-Fit Phase 2. And just wanted to make note of that, and I'll provide a copy for the minutes that can be put in, and just wanted to celebrate another good news story, the fact that we're moving along with some sponsorship dollars. At this time we have one registered presentation tonight from the Tourism Alberta, Mr. Alan Jacobs.
for good to go.
Good evening, Worship and Council. We're very pleased to be back here again, yet again, for another good news story and another wrap-up of the 24th Tour de l'Alberta qui s'est passé ici à Beaumont le 23 de juillet, le 27, le 29 de juillet 2018. C'est un plaisir d'être ici parmi vous encore une fois. I'm Alan Jacobson, the manager of the Tour de l'Alberta, and I'd like to introduce Anne-Marie Adachi, who's the president of the Edmonton Bicycle and Touring Club, and Michael McFinn, the marketing manager of Revolution Cycle. Anne-Marie, would you mind saying a few words about the history of the event?
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. I am, as Alan said, Anne-Marie Adachi, the president of the Edmonton Bicycle and Touring Club. So I will just take a minute to talk about the club because we are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, and we were incorporated as a non-profit recreational cycling club started in 1978. So we are mainly, on average, an annual membership of about 400 members, and we have rides every day of the week at various levels of skill, from beginners, intermediate to advanced groups who go out and enjoy riding in the Strathcona County, in the Beaumont area, St. Albert, North, South, all over Edmonton. And we do weekend rides where we go to Jasper, Banff, down into BC, Caroline, all over the place. So generally, we are a group that functions on three things, I think. We are big on fitness, fun, friendship, and food. We have a website. It's www.bikeclub.ca. So if you're interested in finding out more about us, we are, everything's there on the website. And please come join us. We have members in their 30s and our eldest member who just completed the Tour de Alberta this year and planning to do the 25th TDA next year in his 90th year. And he has been with us for 25 years for sure as a member of our club. So fitness is huge, and it's a great club, and I welcome you all to have a look. And if you're so inclined, come out and join us.
Thank you. Michael.
Excellent. My name is Michael McFinn, again, marketing manager of Revolution Cycle. We are Canada's biggest bicycle store located in the west end of Edmonton. The mandate of my marketing department since I've taken over was to grow the sport of cycling within the Edmonton community. More people that ride bikes are more people that buy bikes. So when I heard the Tour de l'Alberta was under duress and may not continue on because the town of Morinville had decided not to carry on with their support of the Tour de l'Alberta, Revolution Cycle stepped up to the plate and we took over operations of the Tour de l'Alberta. So that was 3 years ago that we did that. And the first thing that we did was we asked if we could politely move it to Beaumont. You guys have graciously accepted, sorry, and we are grateful. It has been a fantastic experience coming out here every single summer in July, taking over the Ken Nichols Recreation Center and shoving 700 riders on your roads in the community and the counties. I can't say enough for how well we are welcomed and the fun that I get to see all these people riding their bikes. We have people riding bicycles as families with dog trailers. We have recumbent bicycles. We have triathletes. We have your road racers. We have 90-year-olds doing their 25th Tour de l'Alberta. And so the wide spectrum of people that come are amazing. It is not a race. It is a tour, and we function it as a tour. So you ride around it, starting in Beaumont, finishing in Beaumont, but all the counties that we visit. And it is really designed for you to stop and enjoy the neighborhood that you go through. So this area is absolutely beautiful. I love taking the photos on my pre-rides, and I love the way that all the counties have worked with us to be able to make it a feasible project. So thank you. I'll let Al give more details about how successful the ride was. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I just want to shout out to the staff at the Ken Nickel and the CPO, RCMP. Everyone has made us so welcome and so very helpful from beginning to end, the 4 days that we're on site here and the weeks and months ahead in preparing this. So just a quick overview for those of you who do know and have been on site. We thank all of you who came out for the first time last year. Mayor Stewart, I think you were visibly impressed at the very least. We take over the entire arena area, parking lot area, and we turn it into a real festive, not that it isn't anyways, but we decorate some of the asphalt and cement. We turn the lobby into our registration and our merchandise and our volunteer area. The arena is home to our end of ride meal, and for a great price point, we have an end of ride meal, A1 Catering, Bill, who does the Big Valley Jamboree, he's been with us now for 3 years, and we have about 700 plus about 150 volunteers come through and enjoy the meal here at the end of the Ken Nickel. Most people, last year again, it was plus 30, beautiful day, so people are outside on the picnic tables in the grass that are amply provided by your town staff. We have great sponsorship, and again, we set up a wonderful beer garden in this case, as well as other amenities for our thirsty drivers. This group is typical of our volunteer groups. This is the North Central Alberta Amateur Radio Club. And our ride, you'll see in some of the maps, we go 160 kilometers, 150 kilometers, and they provide radio control personnel in trucks at all the rest stations throughout the entire route. And they really are the brain, the central location and triangulation of communications, which makes us probably the safest ride and the best supported ride anywhere out there.
If I may interject, when we did our survey last year, 100% of the riders felt safe to very safe on these roads, and we've continued on with that tradition.
Yeah. So just a quick overview of the 50-kilometer. We go out to Villas on the Green, Crepe and Shakes. Miss Bauer from town here provides the crepes there, and we have about 300 riders on that route. This is the 100-kilometer. Again, Villas on the Green. We go all the way out to Miquelon Lake. We've got great support from the park. They can't wait to have us back every year. We always leave them some extra watermelon for their next week's lunches, but it's a great route. And this year we had Rollyview. There's a new owners at the little grocery store there, and again, we're trying to do everything as local as possible. So we engage local vendors. We had Jeff's Cafe, we had Linda from Eagle's Nest. We have as many local vendors and suppliers as we can, and that's really an engagement piece that we're proud of, and we want to develop here more and more often in the future, especially for the 25th. This is the Beast, the 160, up at the Y Road there. We had Eagle Spirit, not just a liquor store, but a grocery store, and Hamid Judge was very happy to provide whatever we needed up there as well as one of our stops. So that's Camrose, Leduc, Beaver, counties, Strathcona County, all partners in this collaborative, wonderful engagement opportunity. That's a little bit of a snapshot of, we have for the 160 about 200 riders. For the 100 kilometer, it's our most popular. We have about 400 to 500 riders hopefully next year, which is quite a sight. And the 50-kilometer ride, we have about 200 riders for that as well. 30 degrees, beautiful day. People were having a great time. I don't think in the 24 years there's been a bad day of weather. So it's been an exceptional event. This should entice any and all of you to come and join us. That time of year, it's just spectacular. Again, this is the Miquelon Lake Rest Station, and we invite Mayor, Council in Tofield. The Mayor and Council are providing the volunteer support at the rest station. We invite you or any of the volunteer groups here to please join us at a rest station. It's a great way to promote your town, wear your town jerseys or whatever you have, and assist in providing all of the sustenance that we provide to our riders. Again, they get watermelon, they get crepes, tourtières, and croissant sandwiches at Miquelon Lake. So. And then again, just a really quick snapshot of some of our sponsors and vendors. You'll see A1 Catering, Eagle's Nest, Pecan Service, Jeff's Cafe, Water and Ice here in town, Sobeys Beaumont, Eagle Spirit, Beaumont Physiotherapy, etc., etc. A lot of buy-in and tie-in. And we would like for the 25th anniversary to get even more, not just businesses and volunteer groups, but the town folks involved too. I think out of the 600 or 650 riders, we had 20 that came from Beaumont, which is a great start. We'd also like to propose a family ride. We mentioned mentioned that in April last year. We have all the infrastructure to do it, but we really feel that if the town of Beaumont takes that one over, you need about 10 volunteers. I know many of you have small children, and we've got the routes and the infrastructure ready for you. So that's a bit of an offer and a bit of a challenge for the town of Beaumont to assist us that way. And we will see you July 23rd, 2019 for the 25th, le 25e anniversaire de la Tour de l'Alberta ici à Beaumont. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, as you mentioned, it was my first time attending that event, and I gotta say it was amazing. It was well organized. The 100-kilometer race, the riders started and they kept coming. And they kept coming. They kept coming. I don't know where we hid them all honestly on the Ken Nickel grounds, but it's a spectacular event. It's great for our community, and I look forward to the 25th and the 26th and 27th. So, yeah, it's a great event. I can't speak enough about it. I'm sure Councillor Stout actually rode. So
yeah, well, he's got the number 1 here, and we're trying to figure out how he got that.
You got that number? That's the question. So I'm sure there's strong support on council. But anyway, I'll open it up to council for questions or comments. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I can only echo your comments. This is a great event, extremely well organised. It promotes a really healthy attitude and lifestyle, and I certainly felt safe riding on all the routes. I was particularly impressed with the crepes and the tortillas, so those going to do those again. Yeah, I rode the 100 this year. This was my 5th or 6th year riding it. I've ridden the 160 as well, which is quite a bit more of a challenge. So I'd like to extend a challenge to my councillors and town administration to join me next year in one or other of the distances. Is there a 10K?
The family ride has traditionally been a 10K. You can do the family ride.
Family ride, okay. And so I can bring my kids and yeah. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you all. It's a great event. I think I missed it this year. Something else was going on, but I like to participate when I can. I particularly am thinking about the challenge of getting the kids involved, because the one year I did attend, it was 2 years ago, the family event was sparsely populated, and I thought, oh, what a shame. It was a beautiful day, great opportunity. And I'm just wondering if there's something that you can provide to help us to do that. I don't mind spearheading and doing some work to try to get people involved with whether it's daycares or schools or whatever, but working with the administration, if there's some way that you can provide us with maybe some information or a speaker or something to help us along, because I think I could make it up, but that wouldn't be good. I should hear from the experts.
We have the structure. We have the plans. We've done it before. The problem has been the public engagement of getting them out. We have tried a number of times to get the Beaumont Business Association on board with coming out.
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, sorry. And that has been a challenge. So getting the support from the locals and from the Chamber of Commerce is key to getting that event active. We're bringing, like we said, so 20 of the 700 people were from Beaumont, so 680 riders came to Beaumont with their families to eat dinner. We also had 10 volunteers that came to Beaumont for the day. All of them were sourced outside of Beaumont. Mm-hmm. We would like to see a lot more engagement from the community to be actively involved in helping these people come back and see what the great nature of Beaumont is. Every year we celebrate by going to Chartier the night before, all of the organizers and sponsors. So we want to make sure that...
It's motivation right there.
Yeah, get on board, we'll buy you dinner at Chartier.
If I may
food
just
comes
add,
across big.
Yeah.
If I may just add to that, we've talked to Joel at the curling rink, and he's got that big curling rink empty in April, May, June, and we're talking about we'd like to do a bike rodeo in April with the CPO and RCMP, and Revolution Cycle will come out, and Marie will come out with the bike club. We'll get the kids on their bikes, safe riding, how to repair bicycles, great for parents and for children, and that'll be sort of an engagement there. And even earlier, we'll send information out to the youth workers here, or whatever the groups are, and they can distribute that to the schools, and we'll try to challenge the schools to come out and enjoy cycling as well. So I think
think those are some of the strategies with the bike rodeo in April
Yep.
we spoke with, and he's 100% behind that because the place is just sitting there empty, and he'd love to assist us with that.
You'll probably see me doing that before you'll see me riding a bike.
Terrific.
But I'll do what I can to help.
And Councillor, there are honorariums earmarked for the volunteer groups. So if there's a way that we can even engage more of the volunteer groups here in Beaumont, this year we've paid out, I believe, over $3,000 to the different groups, one of them including the MS Society, Canavois, Women on Wheels Mountain Bike Club. So we would like to engage more people and provide that back. The tour is operated as a for-profit ride. We have yet to turn a profit, so it is very much a non-profit ride, as we do make sure that any of that profit does go back to in the honorariums or invested into the next year.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Hello, thank you through your worship to the presenters. I wasn't around for this one. Sorry, I will try next year, and we'll see how serious me and Mr. Stout can get here about racing, but he'll beat me. Just into the nuts and bolts of things. Can you speak to any event challenges that you may have had, any potential solutions you're looking into, and if Beaumont were to help more, what that might look like beyond the thoughts you shared with Councillor Barnhart there? Then that's fine.
The main thing would be the volunteers. The other aspect would be, obviously businesses. We have had tremendous support in terms of providing the location, providing sponsorship dollars to be able to advertise within Beaumont. We've also been given opportunities to come and partake in the annual parade that takes part. We are struggling to find a way to engage with the locals to become involved. So we're open to that, to suggestions. We have earmarked, again, the dollars for advertising for that, for the community engagement, for coming out. Maybe we're not doing it correctly, or maybe we're not talking to the right people. So maybe some more passionate people that want to spread the love of Beaumont outside. Beaumont is yet one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. We need to let Edmonton know how close they are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I see no more further requests from council, so I'd just like to once again take this opportunity to say thank you and really appreciate you coming out, and we look forward to next year.
Thank you. We have one little gift for Mayor and Council to present to Mayor Garfield.
Stop hitting the buttons.
I think I've seen that show. Yeah.
We'd like to present you with a jersey and
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right, at this point in time, we come to the point on our agenda where we have unregistered presentations. Just a reminder, these are 5-minute presentations. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Just as a quick reminder, these are not really a town hall. We're not really set up for a back and forth. But if there is some information we need to get, we can defer to admin and go on that. Is there anybody wishing to speak to council on a matter this evening?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of Town Council. A couple of things that I wanted to just say a little bit about. First off, we want to thank all of those in the town who helped us with the move of the Heritage House on Friday. It was a big success and we had a lot of media coverage, so that was very good for the town. The second item I wanted to mention about is regarding the cannabis consumption bylaw. I wanted to say that I'm very happy with the bylaw that you have before us today. I support it 100%, and a lot of residents I've been speaking with do like it, and I'm looking forward to it being passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don't forget to sign in. Carol, got to sign in. Yeah, once again, don't forget to sign in, state your name. Is anybody else wishing to address council this evening? Ooh, for a packed room, it's extraordinarily quiet. All right. Oh, one more.
Hi, I find it interesting that the Community Grants Program is coming up at the meeting tonight. I just wanted to come and say thank you to council and to administration for this program. My oldest daughter's a national level gymnast. This year, both my daughters competed with a national level group in Vancouver. Because of that grant policy or the grant program, I was able to make sure that both my girls could participate. So I just want to come up and say thanks for having a program like that available.
Thank you very much. We like to hear good news too. So.
And my name's Krista Rigier.
All right, one last opportunity. Is there anybody else that wishes to address council this evening? Okay. All right, so item 7A, the first business item tonight, the Aqua-Fit Phase 2 final approval. I'd like to invite Mr. Hiltz and BRT to come down.
We're definitely closer.
Oh yeah, you're a lot closer.
Probably don't need this, you can probably just read off the screen.
I can read off the screen tonight. That's good.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Tonight before you, we have the Aqua-Fit Phase 2 approval. Within the report, there are a series of recommendations, everything from approving the project to move forward, to project financing and construction phasing and a name change from Aqua-Fit Phase 2 to Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center. So this marks pretty much the meeting of 3 years for the Aqua-Fit Phase 2. It started in September of 2015, where the feasibility study for the proposal to build onto the Aqua-Fit Center, the expansion of the Aqua-Fit Center started. And from that time to now, we've had a series of meetings with council and with committee on the project. The project has gone through a series of renditions, and before you within the package, there is the high-level concept plan that the designs for the project have been built upon. So prior to this, this summer after in June of 2016, BR2 also, we initiated the hiring process of the construction manager, and we also brought forward the borrowing bylaw, which council will hear later tonight. And within the last few weeks, we've been working with Clark Construction on various scenarios of working towards the $29.5 million project and contingencies and phasings for the project. The Aqua-Fit Phase 2 project is an expansion and modernization of the existing Aqua-Fit Center to include a National Hockey League ice rink, an indoor field house or multi-sport facility, a high school gymnasium, a climbing wall, and a suspended running track. As I said before, the cost estimates for this project are $29.5 million and will take approximately 20 months. Within your package, we've included project debt financing, or basically the cost of the project, which would be $29.5. And through that, we did two previous cost survey analysis on this project. One when the design was probably at about 50 to 60%, and one when the project was at about 80%. Both projects came in approximately $29.5 million, and that's where we based this the sum of money on. Where we what's kind of happened since the Altus Group survey in February, March of 2018, is basically we've had some steel increases, aluminum increases through U.S. tariffs, and some of these costs have also been going up in terms of how we've been looking at the project as well. So we can deliver the project at $29.5 million. This does not include a contingency, and this contingency, we are recommending, administration is recommending that we do move forward the contingency, and that contingency is approved under the Chief Administrative Officer's signing authority. And this is for any unforeseen circumstances that come up during the construction process. In terms of also, too, within the project, what we have looked at, as the mayor had indicated during his announcement during registered presentations, is that Leduc County has come forward with $2.4 million over a 5-year period, which is great news, plus operational grant of approximately $150,000 a year based on a cap. And their stipulation for this is that the field house would be named after Leduc County. In terms of the phasing options and things like that we had talked about and we were kind of working through with Clark Builders and with BR2 Architecture, is we've tightened up the proposal after the last couple of weeks. We heard at the last Committee of the Whole meeting that Council really wanted us to tighten up the project and to keep it open as much as possible for Council. So now we're looking at the indoor pool would remain open through to January of 2020. And would be basically closed until July of 2020, and that would be closed approximately 7 months and reopen at the conclusion of the project. We're looking at the fitness center and weight room would be closed from December 2018 to July 2020. It is a significant closing period. However, there is significant work that would be entailed of integrating the existing Aqua-Fit center into the modernization of an arena and a field house. Public access would be maintained through an updated south entrance by creating an all-weather parking surface for 28 vehicles, and this would basically shorten the distance where people would have to walk into the facility. And we would basically need to close the temporary dog park in October of 2018, and that would allow for the servicing of what needs to happen at the initiation of construction. Part of the process, too, is at the Committee of the Whole meeting that we had on August 30th, this council had a desire that the Aqua-Fit Phase 2 be renamed something more fitting. We're proposing 2 options. One is the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center or the Beaumont Recreation Center. The names are both specific to the activities that will occur at the center and are easily updated if a major sponsor or legacy name is proposed. Further, both names are easy to remember and have safe generic acronyms. Administration recommends to Council the name Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center because it's very specific, it's clear, and it's quite easy to remember. Within the report, as I indicated before, we've laid out 4 recommendations. And in terms of financing on the $29.5 million by using part of the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, our gas tax funding, our Leduc County funding, interest on debentures, and the Ken Nickel debt retirement, we'd be looking at about approximately $72.47 per year, or $6 per month on the average residential property in Beaumont. The $1 million contingency is being recommended to be drawn from the Mill Rate Stabilization Fund and will not impact the taxes for a single-family residence. So basically, in July of 2020, we would have a completely refurbished pool. The walls, exterior structure, mechanical systems, everything else except with the exception of the tank. And we would have the modernization with the expansion modernization with the new rink, gymnasium, field house, and climbing wall. And we'll open it up to any questions that councillors may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hiltz. I really appreciate the presentation tonight. There's 4 recommendations ahead of us that we got to get through, so we'll probably take them one at a time and move through. Just right off the hop, a few comments. I know there has been some concern around keeping the pool open as long as possible, and thank you for improving the schedule that was improved from Committee of the Whole. But I know myself, I was wondering if we cannot improve that a little bit. as we move forward, and perhaps get that down, shave that down a couple more months, as well as we really like to see the fitness center stay open as long as possible as well. I have a couple of fears. One, we're right at budget. We're at 29.5 and we're getting contingency out of the mill rate stabilization. And so it really needs to, the cost controls on this project need to be in hand, because there's not an endless well here, and it cannot go over budget. And I'm looking right at Clark here.
Oh, good.
All right. Yeah, because you guys are the driver. It's all on you. You come with good reputations, and I have every confidence you can do it, but just need to recognize the money. The money's not endless, and the contingency really is for unforesenities. So at this point, I'd like to move that council approve the Aqua-Fit Phase 2 project to move forward to the construction stage, and I open it up to questions from council. Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sorry, are we doing questions first, or you asked for the motion? Sorry, are we doing...
I made the motion. I'm looking for...
Just questions right now?
Questions and comments, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Sorry?
On number one.
On number one. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. I want to thank Mr. Hill's administration, Mr. Carey, our architect, and Clark Builders. We had a committee of the whole meeting a couple weeks ago, and we had some concerns, and I think you heard our concerns quite clearly, and you also came back to us tonight with the option that I think is quite palatable for many people's perceptions. I did speak with the Triton Swim Club. They are a world-class swimming club here in Beaumont, and they rely on the pool, obviously, because they do swim. So their concern about the pool was quite daunting, and they are comfortable with the proposed new phasing of the pool construction, or the shutdown period. That's key to our areas. They're also synchronized swimming as well, too. So one quick question, though. I raised it before. I'll raise it again. Mayor Stewart mentioned that cost is a concern for us, and you're very aware of that, and we get that. But part of the cost of the Aqua-Fit 2 project is to fix parts of the existing Aqua-Fit building that's only 10 years old and requires substantial upgrades. I'm asked Mr. Carey this question before, but I'm going to ask it again publicly again, because tonight's a big night for us, that cost is important, but we'll spend $29.5 and we're going to get a $29.5 million building. It's going to be a good 20, 30-year building. I'm not sitting here 4 years from now saying, gee, the north wall is not quite right because we should spend a little more money. But we've done costing twice now. It's $29.5. It should be a firm number. But I don't want to be us pinching pennies and cutting corners. At the same time, too, we must be cost conscious. So in your professional opinion, Mr. Carey and our guests, the Clark Builders, are we getting a proper building for $29.5 that we can be proud of, and it's going to last us as it should? It won't be nickel and dimed in terms of construction, cutting corners, if you know what I'm getting at.
Excellent question. I learned something about protocol tonight. You'd think after 2 years of coming here I would learn to say through worship to council. I usually just turn and start talking. To answer your question, you're not getting a 30-year building, you're getting a 40-year building. The existing pool has suffered a premature shortness of life of its mechanical equipment, which is being completely replaced with redundant systems in a new building. The pool envelope is being upgraded, the pool roof is being upgraded, and then there will be wholesale changes to both the fitness and the entry level and the multi-purpose areas. So there has been a lot of discussion over the last week to make sure we're in line with the budget. There was no changes or reductions to mechanical, electrical, structure, even finishes. So no, there has been no cuts. We've stuck with the plan as it was rolled out, and I'm more relieved probably than pleased that we've hit that number. So I'm quite confident, and with respect to definitely recognizing money is always very tight. I'm also comfortable that the process with the construction management process rolling into a stipulated sum, rather than having the conventional pressures on contractors to close tenders at the last minute, they've actually had ample time to receive some really excellent trade coverage, in some cases up to 9 bids, probably the average 4 to 5, and to be able to vet and negotiate those bids. And I took part in that process on Monday to review them. And we won't be discussing who those trades are that are holding the torch, but I can quite confidently say that we have some of the area's finest subcontractors aligned to be awarded contracts should we proceed.
Follow-up? Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. Great answer. I wanted to hear exactly that, and people living at home want to hear that same answer as well, so thank you very much. One last quick question. I know Clark is a very high-profile builder in our province and a very good success rate in previous projects, and we're confident they have the capacity with any other project they've got going to have the proper people paying attention to our project. We're comfortable with your capacity as our builder. Thank you.
Yes,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm extremely confident. The RFP process in selecting construction managers carefully laid out through a two-envelope system that the proponents identify their team, their team's experience, their team's capacity, most importantly, the specific team's experience on projects of similar scale and type. And I'm quite pleased to say that we received 6 very qualified, very well-known, respectable builders, and Clark scored quite clearly the highest in their personnel experience and their bench strength.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship, through you to the presenters. I won't repeat a whole bunch of stuff my fellow councillors have said, but I did want to thank the group in front of us today and Clark Builders. We had a tougher meeting, I would say, last time we were together around, there was some surprises for some folks. We talked through some timeline challenges, and I think we had opportunity to bring up a lot of questions, and a lot of things were answered, and I'm happy with the direction we're facing right now. More specifically, in the agenda, I wanted to bring everyone's attention to there are 4 specific questions that are outlined and answered in the agenda. Ms. Winter, if you wouldn't mind rolling down, please. Thank you. So I think these are in text and provided for residents for a good reason, because they were things that we had heard. So we had talked through Councillor Daniluk with Mr. Carey about question number 1, which is why and how is the construction of the Aqua-Fit impacted? I think we just went down that path and provided an answer to that. Around the dog park, issue heard loud and clear. Administration has been directed to bring back some options for that temporary dog park, and it's my understanding that is underway, correct, Mr. Hiltz?
Yeah, that is, Your Worship, that is correct.
There was a very important question from residents, what about my membership and what about my passes? Just wondering, whether there's a paragraph here, but I'm just wondering if administration could speak to that a little bit, please.
Thank you, Worship, and through to Council. We have reached out to the City of Leduc and both private operators in town, and both are willing to work with us. We have not sat down and talked about numbers and details. It is just that we've got them on board, and now that we have, now that if Council decides to move forward with this project, we can have those real discussions.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important for everyone to understand that there are things that are moving forward rather quickly for a process like this, and we can't get the cart ahead of the horse in that conversation. The last question up here is why don't we use Canadian steel if it's affecting the price? Because we have heard that come up last week and this week. I learned something in this around the steel industry, and I was completely unaware of that. Not that I should be, but just wondering if maybe Mr. Carey could brief us a little bit about what it means to have Canadian steel, just similar to how you and I had talked in the past, and where it comes from, and rolled versus I-beams and that kind of stuff, because I think it's important for people to understand what it means to have Canadian steel and what we get and what we don't.
Well, as we know, Canada is a major steel manufacturer, as has been evident in the news with our friends down south who have decided to punish us in the hopes that would return a viable steel industry to North America, predominantly the United States. In Canada, we have 2 major steel manufacturers, Stelco and Dofasco. There is a Stelco plant actually in Edmonton that produces reinforcing steel. Most steel, if not the vast majority in Canada, what is produced is coil sheet, which is made everything from siding. The majority goes to automotive manufacturing, stamping out of automotive parts, trucks, rail cars, etc. It's been, I think, quite a long time since a Canadian manufacturer made a steel beam, as an example. Most of that hot or cold roll process comes out of, was Eastern Europe for a very long time, and Korea. Now we're seeing a lot of steel coming out of China, Taiwan. So what the steel manufacturers do, and they started this in January when this started just coming into play, the Canadian market is very tiny, even for Canadian steel manufacturers, so they hedge the price of steel. So when the last estimate was done, the price of steel was already partially hedged. And what that means is, as an analogy, is for some strange reason, since as long as I've had a license, the price of gas seems to go up on long weekends. And there's no reason why, it seems to me, and that's what's happening in the steel industry. There's no real reason why a piece of steel, even though it is coil steel, that's going to be sold back to a Canadian already has the hedge priced. The hedging has been priced into the product. That's because they base their pricing on what's going to be sold to the United States. Likewise, any steel that we're going to be getting in from out of country is already hedged as if it was being sold to the Americans. In this project, the steel makes up about 14.5% of the overall contract, and we have seen in the last 6 months on this particular project about a 17% increase. So some things like a wide flange beam have gone up probably 70 to 80% in price, but a bar joist or a T-section has gone up 7 or 8%. So there is an online analysis of what each piece of steel, where they think it's going in the market, and it's all over the map. So we're doing, as much as it's really a disappointment, at a 17.5% increase, it's not that bad right now, and I think it's going to get worse.
Cool, thank you.
That also was one of my concerns, is it's going to get worse.
Just one quick follow-up comment.
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, and why does that matter? Exactly why you said is because it's a piece of our budget. Just from the costing to now, we're up that percentage. It's expected to be more in the future, and those are the points I wanted everyone to know publicly. Thank you for sharing.
In real dollars, on this project, on the structural steel alone, it's about $680,000 right now.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Munkoff-Swain.
Hello and good evening. Thanks for taking me in here all the way from Copenhagen. It's about 4:09 in the morning, so apologies if I come through a little slurred, but we'll get going here. First, I just wanted to thank the residents for all the engagement on this project for many years. The facility is going to be a great addition for our community, and I really wanted to acknowledge all the clubs and users for their input in designing what we've got, but specifically over the last few weeks regarding the construction schedule. So thank you again to those user groups and users for speaking up and really pushing council and administration to find a better solution from where we were 2 weeks ago, and we'll get into that later on, but I'm certainly happy that our residents have pushed us to do that. But speaking to the motion on the floor, from a cost perspective, very happy with the $73 that we have per year. I appreciate that it's still a significant amount of money, but what we get for it, we often forget the bigger picture when we have these important discussions to hammer out the details, but we often forget what we're actually getting here. And I wanted to acknowledge that we get a much needed new sheet of ice, which we haven't been built in 16 years, a new field house, which is going to be great for not only indoor soccer and lacrosse, but there's also spin-offs for things like markets in the winter and that sort of thing. So we also heard that we need places for our youth to go, in the gym, the climbing wall. It's going to be a great opportunity for that. So the bigger picture is that we're going to get a great facility for this. But a specific question that I wanted to ask administration, Mr. Hiltz, you mentioned previously about improving access to the facility, to the site. Could you just paint a picture of how this is going to look? So you mentioned the 28 stalls and that sort of thing. 2 weeks ago, we saw a map showing where residents would need to kind of park and then walk all the way around, and we heard concerns about not only kids with freezing cold outside with wet hair walking out, but also engaged a lot of residents over the last couple of weeks with mobility issues, concerned about drop on, drop off. So could you speak to just paint a picture of how this is going to shake out for residents over the next 2 years while we're in the construction phase?
Okay, through your worship and to members of council, so what is being proposed, and it has not gone through the approval process to date. That is being worked on right now with engineering and with infrastructure. Is we're proposing to create a 28 stall on the southwest corner of the Aqua-Fit lot. So basically what's going to happen is the main entrance is going to change in a couple months from its existing entrance, and it's going to move all the way around to basically the south side of the building. And once it moves to the south side of the building, the southwest corner parking lot would serve to basically allow people to access the facility from basically a few feet away. So you're probably talking, 50 to 100 feet of travel time in the winter to the entrance of the building. Plus, this parking that would be allowed on 50th Street, that is also on the south, adjacent to the south entrance. So that would basically cut down on having to move to basically the north, I guess that'd be northwest corner of the facility, and have to walk that huge distance. So a couple football fields. So we're shut it down to basically having to walk a few feet from basically 2 football fields. I think I've explained that.
Yeah, and in addition to those 28 stalls, there are 3 extra wide barrier-free stalls which will be located on the what is now the existing paved entrance to the parking lot off 50th. That road will be terminated and a portion of it left for the barrier-free parking, which will put it right next to the new entrance.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick follow-up comment there. And I appreciate you're speaking to an empty chair, so it must feel strange for you. It's even stranger for me watching you talking to an empty chair. But I just wanted to, so first thank you for the answers. Certainly a significantly improved solution, and thank you for all the hard work to get to this. The last comment I wanted to make on this is around the communication piece. Now we have brought in Everson Young to help us with that. We talked about it at the committee of the whole meeting a couple of weeks back, but we just need to make sure that we are communicating with our residents through the social media channels, through our newspaper, as many ways that we can, so that people can understand what is going to happen with this project, where they're going to need to park, when everything is happening. So I'm glad we've got this consultant on board, and really the success of this 2 years will really be down to that whole communication piece. So looking forward to that. But going back to the motion, I am in favour and will be voting in favour of the motion that the Mayor put on the table. So thank you.
Councillor Barnhart, you wanted to...
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation and all the hard work. And I won't repeat everything that's been said, but I'm in agreement. This project has been long in the planning stage, and now it's coming to fruition, and I'm very excited about it. I'm very supportive of this. Just a few detailed questions. The parking issue that Councillor Monkoff-Swain just raised, are all of those costs in the project, or are they town costs that are in addition?
Yes, Your Worship, through the jar. Those would be town costs that will assume not inside this project cost or the contingency. These are costs that we'll be able to do through the money that we have assigned on design.
In existing budget? Okay. And second question is around the dog park. I know it's in the works and it's coming back. Any idea on timelines?
Through Your Worship and the members of council, now that if council moves forward with moving this project ahead, then we'll be able to then start working with those couple neighborhoods that we were looking at, some existing parks to create some smaller opportunities. We'll work through the master plan, and then hopefully we'll be able to have a permanent site within the next 2 to 3 years. So there'll be some temporary.
In between there will be...
There'll be a couple probably smaller temporary sites.
Okay.
that's based on the community consultation we'll have with those residents.
So we might hear that next month. Okay. Thank you for that.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Mr. Hills and Mr. Carey. Following on from Councillor Dunlop's questions regarding the competence and suitability of Clark Builders for the project, can you tell me about other facilities similar to this one that Clark have built or constructed?
I can tell you about the ones I'm intimately familiar with. The first one, which was not one of our projects, but is I believe very close to being finished, is Morinville is constructing a new recreation center. Is that correct?
Arena and Fieldhouse, just east of town.
So they scored very highly on that. Clark is...
and that's on budget and, and on schedule?
In a very similar process to this, we worked with the town of Camrose over a number of years to revitalize their existing pool, which is a major expansion and renovation. And we went through the same construction management role to stip some with Clark with this team. That's gone very well. We are working, we completed under the same model a new facility for Barhead. It was completed a year and a half ago, yeah. And prior to that, I worked with Clark in a similar capacity for the county of Sherwood Park on the Glen Allen Recreation Center. And that was about a 40-year-old facility that had complete major renovation of curling, fitness, lounge, entrance, change rooms, etc. Really challenging project, multiple phases, again, keeping projects open, etc. Went really well, and I know the county was really quite pleased with that. So that's 4 projects that we've done, one after another, the last 3 or 4 years.
That stayed on schedule and in budget. Excellent. Second question?
Second question, yep.
Hypothetically, and I stress hypothetically, if we were not to give the go-ahead for Aqua-Fit 2, or whatever we decide it's called after this, the existing building, I understand the existing Aqua-Fit building requires renovation, repair, upgrade,
yes.
And has some structural problems already. Could you speak, please, to timeline and schedule and budget if, hypothetically,
sure,
we needed to make those repairs?
Yep. If this project did not go ahead, it would be strongly recommended, which existing audits by others have identified, that the Aqua-Fit have its mechanical system replaced for the most part. That's for both the pool and the fitness area, not the pool equipment itself, but everything that's heating and air conditioning, furnaces, etc. If the renovation goes ahead, we get to build all of that new stuff in the new building and then connect through a wall. We won't have that if we don't, and the challenge will be we have to get new equipment into an existing building. Getting it out is easy. That's a plasma cutter and a cut-off saw, and you take things apart as small as you can. Getting it in would mean cutting holes in the roof and the walls to get the new makeup air equipment in, or putting it on the roof, which would then require reinforcing of the roof. And I know that the existing footprint isn't big enough for it all to go inside. So if this project were not to go ahead, there will be shutdown of the equipment, cutting it all up, taking it out, putting in new boilers, makeup air units, furnaces, and air conditioning, of which some will go on the roof, which requires structural upgrades. And rather than it being, say, a 2-month shutdown where we open up a wall and reconnect the piping and the plumbing, we have to get everything out, put everything in. And the mechanical alone, I think, would be a 4 to 5 month project. Then there is still the issues of window leaks and stucco, cladding which is deteriorating, entrance doors, etc., etc. Some of that would certainly could run concurrent with that 4 or 5 months, but in reality, it's probably would be more like a 7-month shutdown.
And we have some structural issues too.
And there are, as Carrie mentioned, yes, there are some structural issues that have to be dealt with around the slide tower and on the main floor below the fitness. So it's actually becomes more intrusive to do it as a standalone project.
So the shutdown proposed then in that hypothetical case is very similar to the one that we're actually looking at.
Yes, very good point.
It should also be noted that we don't currently have a project to fix that facility or even on the horizon. So.
No, I stress the hypothetical nature of this, but we would be faced with choosing between, we are faced with choosing between one or the other of those.
Fair enough. Yeah. Councillor Moncada-Swain, you have one more question?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. At the start of this part of the meeting, you mentioned about the gym closing and looking for an improved schedule. So I'll make a couple of comments and then a question. So with regards to that second floor gym, I understand technically now, and thank you again to BR2 and Clark Rules for the detail on that. So we've improved the schedule essentially from October 1st to December 1st. To me, that is, that's great. We get an extra couple of months, but I'd really like to see the builder as well as the architect go through and figure out exactly where we can see improvements to that schedule. Residents that we've engaged over the last couple of weeks, particularly around this, have mentioned how important that fitness centre is to our community. And I know Mr. Hiltz is looking at other solutions, but could you comment on, Mr. Carrier, your perspective on what we could potentially achieve gains in terms of schedule, potentially delaying the shutting down of that gym, because it is a really important part, not just for all of our community. So, Mr. Carrier, could you just speak to a little bit about if we could potentially see some additions to the schedule there?
Yes, there is likely some room in the schedule. We'd have to work with Clark to really understand the sequencing of the piling. There's about 520 piles going in the ground, and we would have to, at some point in time, those piles will impact the existing west wall where the two emergency exits come out. So I do see a possibility of extending the opening, the time that second floor could remain open, with the potential for some broken periods in between where pile and pile caps are being poured, etc. But I think it's something we need to sit down as designers, the town and Clark, and really study what is the optimum plan for doing that. There's always a plan that can be done. We need to evaluate what if there are costs, what would they be, and what are the risks, and what would they be to the public during the construction.
Thank you very much. Councillor Daniluk, one last final wrap-up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate that. My earlier comments, I just want to clarify that I wasn't being critical of the past, but I am cognizant that I do believe this council is very serious of doing this building right, doing it correctly, building we can all be proud of, and I believe this council is very serious in that matter, and I just want to thank the past council for their work in getting things done, but this council is very serious about doing things correctly going forward, and I believe the package we have in front of us with the architect and our builder is the right package at the right price. I'm very proud to vote yes. Thank you very much.
He just stole all my thunder.
Did I?
That's okay. I won't repeat it then. Councillor Daniluk did a good job. This time I'd like to call the vote. Yeah, just doing the one. So, all in favor?
In favor.
Councillor Moncada-Swain. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, second motion on the table. Do I have a council member prepared to move recommendation number 2? Councillor Daniluk.
Your Worship, thank you.
Discussion on the motion. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Through your worship to administration. So, in the construction of a facility this size, you know, there will be some change orders for unforeseen things that come up. There are things that we don't know and can't anticipate that are going to happen, and so we're going to need some contingency. Can administration speak further to the $1 million contingency proposed and how it would be managed, noting that we've heard from everyone that the cost controls need to be tight? Please, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and to members of council. So we've put a plan together for managing the contingency that would be that once a change order comes forward to the town for approval, it would first go through myself, and then that discussion would take place. And then the check and balance there is that it has to be signed off by the Chief Administrative Officer. So another set of eyes would be essentially looking at it as well to make sure that that is actually a required expense.
Thank you. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Through your Worship to Mr. Hiltz, Mr. Carey. Simple question. Is $1 million enough money for a contingency? It's only about 3% of the total budget.
Yeah, the industry standard that the courts seem to stick with in Canada is 3% is typical cost increase on a project. The insurers like to think it's 5%, but the reality is, and I'll point to a project that we just handed over in Cold Lake of a similar complexity. It is an arena, has a climbing wall, was attached to an existing building, had challenges with respect to keeping trades online as it being in Cold Lake. It's not in-town work. And that project came in, it was a $20 million project, the expenditure was about 3.2%. And it was a much more aggressively bid project in that it wasn't this CM rolled into a fixed price, and that meant that the general contractors who bid it had to all close their bids within 20 minutes of the last hour, and mistakes were made by the bidders. So they were very, very, very aggressive to try to recover every penny, and I'm quite proud that we kept it at 3.2%. This process allows the builder, in this case Clark, to really take the time to vet those bids, and so we're really eliminating a lot of that risk through their hard work, where they sit down with all the trades and say, have you really got all this? Is this covered? Do you understand what's on the drawings? Yes, no, so that we're not from day one dealing with this penny grabbing. That I'm been right so far. I'm hoping 2 years, I feel confident I'll be able to come to you and we will still have not exceeded the 3%.
Fair enough. Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Carey may have answered part of my question, but just for clarity, I'm not a construction person, so my example may be too simple, but it may make my point easier. With the process, let's say, for example, drywall. Mm-hmm. If the drywall contract is $300,000 for the project, the contractor they've chosen through yourselves and Clark is happy through the project, realizes he underbid, he can't get the job done, he's overextended, he says, I'm done, guys, I'm tapping out. There's a shortfall there. That to me is a performance issue, not a contingency issue. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
So what would happen then, briefly, without going into too much detail into the weeds, it's Clark's responsibility to make up that, not the shortfall, make that project finish from the drywall perspective. It would not be coming upon the contingency fund to draw any funds from that to make up for that shortfall or that transgression by the defaulted contractor.
The town would be signing a stipulated sum contract as a version of this contract we began with for construction management, that you have one contract with Clark Builders. You don't have contracts with any of the subtrades. Clark will have those subcontracts. And if one of those subtrades were to default or not be made whole, it's Clark's responsibility to complete the project.
So if I could use a layman's term then perhaps, is that by default a performance bond environment where it's their performance issue, not ours, correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
All right. Seeing no further questions, I will call the vote. All in favor? That carries unanimously. All right, do I have a member of council prepared to move motion number 3? Councillor Danlock. Sorry, Councillor Stout. Wrong button.
Thank you, Your Worship. So moved.
Fair enough. Discussion on the motion? Yeah. Councillor Stout?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, Mr. Hiltz and Mr. Carey. We do have a scheduled outage for both the pool and the fitness centre. If we are on this plan, let's say, that we've just adopted. What happens to the staff in each case? Could you speak to that, please?
Yep. Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and your members of council. So any of the staff that our town of Beaumont employees would be redeployed. Any full-time staff would be redeployed to other positions or work within the town. So for any of the pool staff who are full-time would move into there's recreation program work. There's other types of work that would fit for that 7 months. Any of the casuals, they would also be deployed on a case-by-case basis to take on, let's say, some of our summer camps, some of our leadership jobs, youth leader jobs, and things like that. Those also to the City of Leduc in discussions with them, because they will be increasing their pool capacity, has also agreed to take on some of our staff for that period of time as well.
Quickly.
There is a childcare facility in the there is a childcare facility in the Aqua-Fit. Does that close at the same time as the pool, or at the same time as the fitness centre?
The child minding, it's not a child care facility, it's a child minding, so we do offer a few hours a day of child minding for people to be able to participate in their recreation pursuits at the Aqua-Fit Centre. So basically that would be closing with the fitness centre, because that's where we're going to be recreating that new entrance. The temporary entrance.
So users of the fitness centre also make use of the child minding facilities?
Some do.
Well, the ones that do would then need to find an alternative gym with a child minding facility.
With the through Your Worship and members of council, that would be for the pool users. Would then the people who use the pool would have to find that alternative, because if the weight room would not be open, that would change that dynamic. So they wouldn't be using the child minding. They would they'd be going to other facilities and things for those pursuits. So we would be closing the child minding, so those that would use the pool during the construction phase would not have access to child minding.
So that becomes, that service is lost?
Yes.
Effectively. Thank you.
Councillor Hendricks.
Your Worship, thank you. And I just also want to reiterate the whole concept of trying to improve on this schedule. It's the residents, it's our taxpayers that use this facility, and we want to tighten it up as much as possible. We know that we will get our best efforts from our admin and the team from Clark to get us the shortest, tightest timeline with respect to the existing facility. Thank you.
I wholeheartedly agree with your comments. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just further to what was raised earlier about communication and making sure that our residents know what the phasing is, and if it changes for the better, how we can certainly communicate that. Could you maybe expound a little bit on the how often the plan might be to let people know? Maybe you don't have that detail yet, but what you're shooting for, and which channels of communication are we going to be using?
Thank you. To Your Worship and members of council, we have a fairly aggressive communication outlay for the first basically 6 weeks of the project through to when construction starts and a month into construction. So basically we'll be using all forms of social media, our website, and the newspaper that are available to us. For example, right after this goes through the approval tonight, communications will be sending out a press release, so that will be live actually after this meeting. This week we'll also have some FAQs out. On the 20th, 21st, we'll have a rollout of additional communications, and so basically the website and social media will be our main platforms. We have the Aqua-Fit Phase 2 section on the website, and then we'll also do updates in the newspaper and etc. So we do have a fairly significant rollout there for communications.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Just a reminder, we don't want to get too far down into the weeds tonight, as things may still change. Councillor Van Newkirk, last question, wrap up.
Yeah, more of a comment. Thank you, Your Worship, through to the presenters on the heels of Councillor Barnhart's questions. Communication is very, very important, and I think we need to be cautious not to confuse residents with too many means and too many things as well, and to be as succinct as we can with our communications as to not create concerns where there may not have needed to be any. Not too far in the weeds, but just a general comment about that. So
that's a fair comment. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we'll call the vote with the caveat that we'd like to see it tighten up a little bit more. All in favor? Councillor Moncasway.
In favor.
Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Final motion. I will move that council approve the Aqua-Fit Phase 2 name change to the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Centre. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. The motion does include the French version as well. And I just want to clarify that that is going to be the name, including the French version. I'm just concerned because it's in small letters, and I don't know if that's there just to translate, or is that part of the name?
Through Your Worship, that is actually how the translation works. It is small letters with the capital on Beaumont.
So that
is correct.
Acceptable? Okay. Haven't seen that before, but I assume you've done your research on that, and that's. I'm really pleased to see that, and I think that it's not the shortest and the simplest name, but at the same time, it does definitely identify it, and I'm pleased to support that name.
Councillor Moncasway, comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment. Mr. Hiltz mentioned right off the top that there were two options: the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Centre, or just the Beaumont Recreation Centre. I appreciate the motion is the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Centre. I prefer to keep things simple here, so I would rather see the Beaumont Recreation Centre BRC. Just a comment from me.
Okay, fair enough. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Unfortunately, I find myself taking a slightly contrary position there. Then, if we're going to drop one of the words, I'd prefer to drop recreation and make it Beaumont Sports Centre.
I got to admit, I'm not adjusting my motion, so we're going to vote on it as is.
Very well. Thank you.
All right. All in favor? Councillor Moncasway.
Not in favor.
That carries 6-1. And we're going to, that being the last on that item, we've been now sitting for almost an hour and 40 minutes. We're going to take a quick 5. I know the meeting's running a little long, but I think when we have momentous occasions like that, it's worthwhile to take the time to make sure everything is fully discussed. That brings us to item 7B, Community Grants Program Policy. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, administration is recommending that council approve policy C15.1 or .1, Community Grant Program, and rescind policy C15, Grants, Donations, and Funding Policy. At the July 17, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting, committee members reviewed the town's grant, donations, and fund policy. The committee requested at that time that administration develop a policy which provides funding based on the following: 1% funding from the municipal property tax requisition, one-time and ongoing funding, 2 or 3 application deadlines, an evaluation review mechanism involving an advisory committee, and council having the last approval, final approval. Attached in your package is policy C15.1. It identifies the responsibilities of council, administration, a new grant funding advisory committee, which will review and assess all community grants submitted based on the following ranking criteria, which is below. To assist the committee in reviewing applications, a procedure setting out the eligibility requirements, and non-eligible expenditure and how the funds are distributed has been established, and that's attachment 2. So at that point, the attachment 3 is a draft program application form, and attachment 4 is a applicant's guide to assist those groups wishing to apply for a grant. In regards to the policy, if you go to page 122 of 235, responsibilities, council shall authorize a grant funding advisory committee to provide recommendations. 2, be responsible for awarding the community grant program funds. And 3, ensure funding allocation decisions reflect the best interests of the community. The Grant Funding Advisory Committee shall 1, review and rank applications using the predetermined criteria and make recommendations to council. 2, make recommendations that reflect the best interests of the community of Beaumont and the area and align with the town council priorities and vision. 3, appear as a delegation before council to address their recommendations. And 4, may also make recommendations to council related but not limited to the community grant program, annual budget allocations, processes, and program guidelines. In regards to the procedure, starting on page 125 of 235, it basically lays out the funding availability as indicated 1%. Application deadline, looking at 2 application deadlines of April 1st and October 1st. Who can apply? It identifies 4 groups. The basics, basically 1,000 minimum funding request, and funding is available for capital projects, programs, and operating core costs. Also, it talks about the final decision, again, resting with council, and then again, it talks about the responsibilities. And finally, how the funds would be distributed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Just before we proceed, just need to make a quick note that Councillor Munkoff-Swain is going to leave the meeting. Thank you very much, Councillor, for joining us from afar. I know it's the middle of the night where you're at, and we really do appreciate that. Moving forward on in the meeting, do we have a councillor prepared to make the motion? Councillor Barnhart.
So moved, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion.
Could I
follow up? Yep. Thank you, Sam.
Okay, so thank you. It's been, again, this is something we've been hoping for a long time, and you've been working on, Mr. Harris, so very pleased to see it here. And please, my questions are kind of in the some of the detail, just to make sure that I understand where we're going here. And I do like that the detail is here. So first question is around who's eligible. And if I'm reading it correctly, groups can apply, but this is not geared towards individuals applying? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so if someone were to be part of a sport group or an organization and was going on some kind of a trip, the organization could apply?
Yes.
If it fit the eligibility criteria?
Yes.
Okay. Then the other comment I'll make at this point is around the ineligible programs. And I think with a program like this, we're going to see a change over time as the committee gets together and sees what works and what doesn't. But one of the ineligibility criteria was, I don't remember what page it was on, but it talks about the duplication of services, and that would make it ineligible. And I just want to mention here that, you know, we don't have just one coffee shop or one restaurant, or like there are some times when you have more than one service being provided because it might provide a different kind of service or it might provide it to a different group of people. I just wonder if there's some latitude on that particular criteria, because I think duplication of services might mean that there's more than one needed or more than one type of service.
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, the rest of the council and the public. Yes, that would be where the committee would be looking at the nuances and look at that kind of a deal, because you're correct that some groups may offer the same services but target a different group. So in that situation, they're different.
And like you said, council will have the final approval, so if there's some of those things that we hear about after something, yeah, we can talk about it. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Hello, through your worship to administration. Thank you for bringing this forward. Just bigger picture, council asked for this and we have to start somewhere. Thank you for that. This is the start somewhere. Matrices and scoring systems are going to always be open for comment, and but again, we need to start somewhere, so thank you for that. A more specific question. It's stated that council shall authorize a grant funding advisory committee to provide recommendations in matters related to rewarding of the grants and funds. I may have missed it, but could you speak to, at this point, or maybe we aren't that far down the road, how would we go about selecting members for the grant funding advisory committee and avoid any potential conflicts of interest with different members from different groups in the areas, being members of the advisory committee and such? That may be one step further than we needed today, but I think it's something we need to be cognizant of as we move forward.
Through your worship to the rest of council, that's a great question. In regards to the structure of it, I do have something, but I don't believe it's in this package kind of deal, and we can bring that forward. Yes.
Okay. One follow-up.
One more follow-up. Yep.
Yep. Were there any, through your worship to the presenter, were there any local user groups canvassed in the development of this policy by chance? Or maybe that's out of scope.
Through your worship to Councillor Van Nieuwendyk. No, there was, in regards to developing the procedure, it involved council, the previous, I guess, policy, and reviewing other policies that other communities have, kind of deal. Yes, so no specific user group was looked at.
Fair, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Harris, great work. This is a really thorough document. It's a great first kick at the cat, as the saying goes. I'm prepared to see how it goes for 2019 and see how it works out at the end of the year. My only question is, how much is 1% going to work out to being? How much is 1% in terms of available total grant money? Ballpark it.
$183,000.
Okay, thank you.
Nice ballpark. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through your worship to Mr. Harris. Am I reading this correctly? Is the maximum grant allowed $10,000?
Through your worship, yes.
So, following up, we have granted some organisations more than $10,000 in the past. I'm thinking particularly of the Beaumont Blues Festival. Does adoption of this policy then make an 80% cut to the grant that they're receiving? If I'm remembering how much we granted them correctly, which was $50,000, I think, wasn't it?
Through your worship to Councillor Stout, the rest of council and the public, if that grant, or the grant that's provided there falls under this policy, that would be correct. Council does have the ability, again, to take any grants outside of that and look at it as a different setup, i.e. Do an agreement with them outside the policy, because this is a policy. But as it stands right now, yes, that would mean a 80% reduction.
I know we sort of meant this policy to be sort of all-encompassing, to encompass all groups. Could we just amend the document to drop the $10,000 cap, and then it would all fit in the same funding envelope, the same application process would be used, the policy would be consistent, and we'll just leave it at that?
Yeah. Through worship, yes, you can eliminate the $10,000 cap.
Is there support from council to do that? Should I have? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we make that amendment?
Yeah. We can amend that.
Yep. I'll get to him in a second. Councillor Hendricks.
So thank you. And just to the amend, perhaps Mr. Schwartz, I understood that there was a different framework built for the Blues Fest group, and the policy in terms of timing, when they got their funding, that there was a date and time that was more or less organized for that. So,
through worship to Councillor Hendricks, the rest of council and the public. Yes, the Blues Fest has been treated as almost a separate entity in itself outside of the existing grant funding policy. So yes, that's why I'm saying that we can have no problem dropping the amount if you want to pull them into this policy kind of a deal, and they would fall within all the other guidelines. But yes, in the past, it has been looked at differently.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hiltz.
Just to follow you up your worship, is we do have an agreement with the Blues and Roots Festival on a year-to-year basis that provides them the funding. It provides the outline for the funding and expectations of that funding. But it basically, the council would have to make the determination if this grant policy would include it or exclude it.
Okay, quick question for Mr. Mr. Schwartz or Mr. Hilson. Would we need to make that determination tonight, or would that be a budget item? Mr. Schwartz?
We could make that decision tonight. I think there are examples, and that's probably the most obvious one, where you could label it as a signature event for our community and deal with it separately outside of this policy. However, council could also choose to include it. We could very easily have this discussion at budget as well.
Councillor Hendricks.
Not getting the weeds, but the previous council, I believe, as I recall, did negotiate a deal with the Blues group, and there was a timing piece to that agreement because of their need to have funds at a certain point in their fiscal year to be able to pull this event off. So, and that was, as I recall, a bit of a struggle to get the finer details sorted out. So I think that was done, and I'm just asking then, does that agreement then gets cleared off, wiped out, and this steps in its path, and they'd have to reapply under these rules?
Through your worship to Councillor Hendricks. No, I believe that agreement as it sits right now is a separate agreement. I see it that they would technically fall not under this, but having said that, council can move towards that direction as they negotiate with the Blues Fest.
Councillor Hendricks.
I did enjoy the standalone approach that we finally had with that whole situation. So we weren't revisiting that each and every time. So thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to propose then we take this up at budget, and we can discuss then if they're standalone, if they fall under the cap, or they don't. Because that's honestly, I'm looking at time, and we'll be here till midnight if we try to hash this out now. Is council okay with that? Is administration okay with that? Councillor Randy Kirk.
Hello, thank you, Worship. Through to administration, thank you for that friendly amendment or retraction, whichever it was. One of the things that I was actually looking forward to in this policy was putting a cap on things so that we knew where we would stand, because we want to have longevity in this, and we want to create a program that can be as exclusive as we can. And if we put a cap on user groups, then it means more people could apply and more people could share in some of that. That was one of the things I was hoping to, or I was happy to see. So I guess I comment now. Thank you for putting it to budget time.
Thank you. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship, and I just want to clarify what we're putting to budget time, because it doesn't sound like this policy, I'm going from notes and trying to go back and forth to find the page, and that's not working very well. But we did say in here in the policy that it included economic development and events and activities that brought the community outsiders to Beaumont. And that's certainly what the Blues and Roots does. So if we're approving this policy and that's in there, and we're approving it tonight, I don't think I think we're muddying up the waters. I just think we need to figure out what's covered by this policy and what's not.
Right now, what's proposed is this policy will cover all external user groups except Blues Fest, because they have a currently standalone agreement, and we will discuss at budget whether or not they will fall into the cap under this policy, or we'll allocate other funds, so basically it's everybody but Blues Fest gets.
No, I'm just not sure that's fair, because what if there's a new festival out there that wants to get started or something?
Well, then they can present it, and we can take it on a case-by-case basis.
We've had one. We've had the Beaumont Night Market that we funded as well. Is that a one-off?
That would fall under in this policy as well.
At the 10,000 cap?
There is no 10,000 cap anymore.
We've
taken the 10,000 cap out.
10,000 cap comes off now.
Yeah. And the cap is the 1% of taxes, so it's $183,000. That's what we have to distribute among all the groups that apply.
I get that. Okay, so the two things that are changing with what we have here today are the cap is off and Blues and Roots is being a one-off, seen as a one-off.
Unless we change it at budget, but yes.
That's what you're proposing.
That's what I'm proposing.
Well, and I made the motion, so.
That's right, you did. Can I get a friendly amendment?
Yes, okay.
Sorry, Councillor.
If it's what we said. Yes. Okay. Hope you got that. Yeah, okay.
Mr. Schwartz?
If I could add, and I know there's a risk at crafting policy at regular council, we came back with this because we thought it was pretty close. In this program, and I've seen it work in other communities, requires a couple check marks, and one of them is an annual review that includes the committee who will then report to council any suggested changes. And I think it was Councillor Daniluk that talked about, he's ready to go, and let's see how this goes for 1 year. That's the intention here, is let's put this in place. Let's look at, there's a very good point that we have a standing agreement with the Blues Roots. Maybe that becomes one of our signature festivals. Maybe the night market becomes another signature festival. We budget that separately, but all others funnel through this program. And what you'll see is this advisory group coming and presenting to council their rationale, their scoring, and their recommendation, and then ultimately it will be council that will approve the expenditures. And then we'll look at it every year and say, hey, this isn't working, this needs to be tweaked. So it's a fluid process.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Hello, through your worship, to administration, and ultimately maybe back to Councillor Barnhart to put the motion forward. So for myself, I wouldn't support the amended motion. As I stated, I may have been unclear around the $10,000 cap. I was unclear when I was making my comments. I thought that it was going to stay. I do support the $10,000 cap staying. I think that one of the things you need to do when you're crafting policy is you need to take a step back and you need to look at the policy and ensure that sometimes you're protecting yourself from yourself. And a policy is something you can reflect back on, and it's something that can say, okay, there are some checks and balances in here to this system. But I note at the end of this, it says document in the policy, it says final decision, and it clearly says there's a discretion of council. All funding requests are subject to town council approval. Town council reserves the right to distribute the available funds. Town council may grant all, none, or portion of the funding. So there's 3 bullet points at the end that do allow council some discretion in those things. So I believe that if the cap were to stay at 10,000 and groups knew that, and council definitely has a hammer, because there's three bullet points that say, I think that kind of protects ourselves from ourselves, and I think it's important to have a cap on that funding remain such that, as I stated earlier, we can make sure we get funds available to a broad number of groups and not blow the show with 2 or 3 really good presentations that come through. Just my point. Thank you.
Fair enough. Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Mr. Harris and my fellow colleague on council, Mr. Van Newkirk. When I said, go forward for the 2019, see how it goes, that included the $10,000 cap. But I wasn't thinking about the Blues Festival until it was mentioned earlier in the discussion. So I have to agree with my Councillor Van Newkirk that I do think the $10,000 cap in this policy provides guidance for our applicants. It provides us not having to be called upon too often to make exceptions or to have to go above 10,000. I'm fine with that. If we can do the Blues Festival as a separate item, I think I'm comfortable staying with a $10,000 cap in this policy for 2019 and seeing how it progresses during the year. Thank you very much.
Okay, clearly this is going to require greater discussion, so I'm going to move that we table this, go back to committee of the whole, and get this sorted out. All in favor? Can we take this back to committee of the whole? Yeah, we'll vote on it. Sorry. All in favor? That carries 6-0. Taking it back to committee of the whole. Table the motion for now. Motion's on the table, so we'll do a committee of the whole, then we'll pick it back off the table and go back to her. Sorry.
I'm fine with that.
I don't want to do policy on the fly, and it's late, and I'm tired, and this is going to take an hour and a half. So
this is going to take an hour and a half?
No, the grant policy is going to take an hour and a half.
Oh, sorry.
Having said that, though, it's great work. It's a very good first kick of the cat. I'm very happy to see it, and I think we have agreement from council on most of the items. We just got to work out some bigger picture stuff. Item 8A, bylaw 922-18, Aqua-Fit Phase 2 borrowing bylaw, second and third reading. Mr. Harris.
Through your worship, to council and the rest of the public, given your recommendation or your approval of the project, before you is first to give a second reading and then to give third reading of bylaw 92218, the bylaw to incur an indebtedness in the amount of $26,650,000 for Aqua-Fit Phase 2.
Thank you very much. Do I have a council member prepared to move second reading? Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, so moved.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Mr. Hills. I'm just looking at the numbers and trying to make them jive. There's a provincial grant listed. I've lost the page now. Could we crank down a little further? There's a provincial grant listed of 2.6 million.
2.85.
2.85. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I can't make that jive. Earlier, when we were discussing the funding of it, there was a municipal sustainability initiative and a gas tax, but none of those amounts are 2.85. I'm wondering where the 2.85 is coming from and why it isn't represented in the other motion that we just voted. Can you crank me back to?
Through Your Worship, my understanding to Councillor Stout, my understanding is that the MSI grant is $2,850,000 off of the 29.5, which gives you the $26,650,000. The federal gas tax grant funding of $1,010,400, I think that's the number, isn't applied against the borrowing by the amount to be borrowed. It's being applied against the principal and interest costs, along with the $2.4 million from the county, which is going to be amortized over 20 years at $120,000 a year. And then the other funding is $203,900 and something. That is a debt falling off for Ken-Nickel 2. That's going to be, as opposed to going into reserve, which our debt does when it falls off, goes into reserve for capital items, will be used to keep the tax increase down. Should work.
I understand that your explanation about the gas tax fund, but I'm still puzzled about the provincial grant. Can we backtrack to page 107 of 235 on the package, please, which was, I know, refers to a previous item. There. The Municipal Sustainability Initiative is listed as 5.7 million, and I don't see a 2.8 million amount on this chart. What am I missing?
Through Your Worship?
Yeah. Go ahead, I'll take a crack.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Stout, the rest of council, and the public, the overall remaining amount of the MSI grant available to Beaumont is 5.7 million. Council made the decision when looking at the funding of the project to use only 50% of the MSI towards reducing the borrowing for the project, to leave the other $2.85 million available for other projects. That is why those two numbers don't tie in. If you go to page 113 of 235, you'll note, which is attachment 2 to the previous one, you'll see the breakdown of how the 2.6650 comes in. This analysis on page 113 of 235 is a point in time. We are looking at either, in this one, it assumes that we're going to borrow the whole $26 million all up front, but it may be more beneficial to do it over the project time, such that it will be a phase into that maximum amount. So there's some flexibility in that. This is the worst case scenario.
So if we don't need to borrow, we won't?
It's in regards to how to phase in that tax increase, and that we're still looking at it. There's two ways to go at it, and we're trying to find the most beneficial to the ratepayers of Beaumont.
Fair enough.
Misapprehensions.
That's all right.
Further discussion? All right, so just want to make sure I'm on the right spot. All in favor of second reading? That passes unanimously. Is there a member of council prepared to move third reading? Councillor Danlock.
So move, Your Worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion? All in favor? That carries unanimously. All right, so that brings us to bylaw 926-18, the Land Neighborhood Structure Plan, second and third reading. Mr. Wong.
Thank you, Your Worship. A non-statutory hearing was held earlier this evening. The administration recommending Council to give second and third reading to bylaw 926-18, a bylaw to adopt the Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan. And on the basis that this amendment supports the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan, complies with the municipal development plans and the Elan Area Structure Plan. The Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan will help Beaumont to continue to grow into a complete community that provides a variety of options and amenities to its residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council that will move second reading? Councillor Barnhart.
So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, we will call the vote. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Is there a member of council prepared to move third reading? Councillor Hendricks.
So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? All in favor? That also carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Wong.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love it when they go like that. All right. That brings us to bylaw 929-18, Beaumont Cannabis Consumption Bylaw. Chief Cook, Mr. Springham, and no, just two. Okay, Chief Cook. Sorry, quick pause. What's the question? You can't provide an opinion. You can ask clarifying questions. Right? Second reading is where you get to propose amendments and all the rest of that stuff. Did I get that right? All right. Gentlemen, please.
Good to go. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. It's a pleasure to be back here with you this evening. Your Worship, before beginning, I'd just like to bring council's attention to the stakeholder and engagement section of this request for decision, just with an adjustment. Administration has recognized that we're able to move up the advertising of this bylaw to September 14th and 21, and then, of course, we're prepared to return to council for a second and potentially a third reading at the regular council meeting on September 25th. Administration, of course, apologizes for this change. Your Worship, at the regular council meeting on August 28th, council directed administration to prepare and bring forward a bylaw prohibiting the consumption of cannabis within the municipal boundaries. As presented, bylaw 929-18 includes acts and regulations allowing Beaumont the authority to enact such a bylaw, definitions as well as penalties and enforcement, and bylaw 929-18 prohibits both the consumption of cannabis as well as we've included the consumption of edibles, as we know they will be forthcoming for within the town of Beaumont. This bylaw has received legal review, and it's very important to note that this bylaw does not prohibit the consumption of cannabis within a private residence, and it does not prohibit the use of cannabis for medical purposes. Those, of course, will fall to the just subject to restrictions within the smoking-free public places bylaw within the town of Beaumont. Administration is seeking first reading to this bylaw, the cannabis consumption bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council prepared to move first reading? Councillor Danlock.
So move, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
All right. Are there clarifying questions on the motion? Councillor Van Newkirk, or do you have a follow-up?
No, sorry, no. I missed the button.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
I'm sorry, I was all good.
You were all good? Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing this forward. I still have lots of questions about how this is going to work in conjunction with other laws and the smoking bylaws and provincial laws and liquor laws, et cetera, et cetera. So I still need more information on it. But my question for you right now is around the use of cannabis in a private residence. Does that include the outdoors? Does that include their backyard?
Through your worship to council, yes it does. That is mandated federally, and as per that mandate, any adult may consume cannabis within their private residence. That does include their yard, yes.
But that does or does not include private property that might be owned? Like if someone owns a piece of land,
Yep.
are they allowed to smoke on that piece of
That
land?
would be, correct me if I'm wrong, private residence.
That's private.
Doesn't have to have a building on it.
No, it would be private residence, so where it would be my home, for example.
You have to have a building in order for but you can use the backyard, but you can't.
It has to be your house. It can't just be a
You
building.
have to live there.
Correct.
Through your worship and council, that would be all inclusive, right? So it's not, I know you're looking at, if I've got an open piece of land, can I just smoke?
I'm not looking for it, just to clarify.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just clarifying. Yeah.
But no, it's inclusive actually with the residence and the property. Where do you own
So in a property that you own, a house, you can and people who are in there can smoke cannabis if they're in your home.
If you permit them to, yes.
It's up to the owner of that
That's correct.
property.
Yes.
Okay. Just clarifying. Thank you.
Are there any further questions of council? Sorry. All right, we will, oops, hang on. We will call the vote. All in favor? And first reading carries unanimously. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
All right. All right, Councillor, item 9, Councillor Committee Reports. Does any member of council wish to address us this evening? I already jumped the gun and pulled out my good news. But I wanted to do it with a crowd here, so. Councillor Barnhart, you good?
Just give me a second.
Sure. Or maybe we'll jump to the CAO and come back to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council. It's been a long meeting. I haven't got a lot to add. Just a reminder, we got AUMA coming up September 26th to 29th, and it's going to be held in Red Deer for the first time. I find AUMA is always very exciting the months before a provincial election. Who knows what else can happen. And I know the mayor is probably going to talk about the next item in the correspondence, but that's good news for us, and I won't steal any more thunder, so I'll leave it for Mayor Stewart. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some brief questions for the CAO, if any. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Oh, thanks, through your worship, to the CAO. Comment and a question. Recently, we had a communication from the town regarding switching some yield signs to stop signs. Just wondering if you would be able to share how we get there and the authorities and the communication. Just kind of maybe walk us through that for everyone's knowledge, please. Thank you.
Certainly. By council-approved bylaw, appoints the authority to the CAO for things like traffic signs, including speed limits and other devices regarding traffic. What we did on the inner ring road is through consultations with municipal enforcement and our own staff who are out there quite frequently, and the inconsistency in those signs with the outer ring road. And with the size of our community, the traffic flow is increasing, and we have more incidences of unsafe situations, including a rollover untold. So we made the decision to transfer the sign, change the signs out from yield signs to stop signs. It makes it consistent across our community, and the hope is that it will calm traffic and increase safety.
One quick follow-up? Yeah, thank you for that. I asked the question to which you and I have chatted about already, but I think it's important for everyone to know and understand that, administration and specifically the CAO has the authority to do some things too, and this is one of them. Council is here, but there are also strong authorities that our CAO has, and this is one of them, and thank you. I think it's important for everyone to know that, so thank you.
Councillor Danluck.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a follow-up to that question from Councillor Van Newkirk. I'm totally fine with the procedure involved, how this was actually done, but I actually received 4 phone calls from residents asking about the stop signs, which are more phone calls than I got about cannabis. It's kind of a funny thing. So I'm just wondering if there can be any possibility of, once that decision's been made by the CEO, we could be conveyed as council members, so we have a heads up to, we might get a couple of phone calls. I was surprised I got more phone calls from that than about cannabis. Just seems funny when people decide to call about, you know. And a follow-up question on another matter, if I could. Yeah, please.
I was going to make a comment that you got 4 calls over the stop signs. You should have seen how many calls we got when we changed the speed limit on 510. It certainly gets people attention to the point where, and people were actually, we actually measured the distance and the delay it would cause, and it was like in the seconds. Certainly, I would have no trouble communicating that out. We had done a communications to the community, which I figured included council, but we could do one specifically.
Much appreciated. My other question is, could we have an update next council meeting on transit numbers, please? Thank you.
The transit numbers, what we're waiting for is the final 1-year anniversary stats, and they are typically 1 to 2 months behind, so that is why we haven't brought those forward. We plan to bring them forward in the first part of October, so hopefully that'll work. Then we have the complete 12-month picture. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Follow-up to the yield sign, stop sign comment. I'm sorry to labour this, and we have corresponded on it already. My question was really, if we are collecting statistics regarding the amount of delay that a speed limit reduction causes, or whether or not there have been accidents or rollovers at stop yield intersections, is it possible to communicate some of that information through to council? And the reason I ask is because, or those statistics through to council, the reason I ask is simply to provide me with a rebuttal when I receive the sort of comments that Councillor Danlach's also referred to, from outraged of Beaumont, who feels that that these are unreasonable changes, and complains to his councillor.
The reason we don't get into that level of detail is these are operational issues, and what we hope is that we keep council up at the 10,000-foot level working on strategy and not worrying about day-to-day operations of the organization. I would urge you to very quickly refer those people back to administration, either through our website or through the department general manager, and they can get you that information. I worry that we get, and I know there's a fine line and it's not black and white, and we do err on that. We tried to err on the side of providing more information, but there is that risk. So I guess we'll have to take it on a one-off basis.
So the recommendation would be to refer directly to yourself or to the appropriate officer within administration.
That would be our preference for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Hendricks.
Worship, thank you. And just a quick question on the live streaming. I think there's some talk that perhaps we're going to up the game on the technology side of the live streaming of these meetings. Is there something coming to budget that would take us somewhere else in terms of the technology that we're currently using?
Sorry, I hit Carrie's. I should have hit mine. Through Mayor and through Council, currently IT is looking at options. Our IT geek, as he likes to be referred to, is looking at a potential of a one-button system where the mayor just turns it on and off. And so we are looking at that right now, yes.
Okay. Councillor Van Newkirk, last question.
Hello, thank you. I wanted to save this for last. Some feedback that I've received. A couple of kudos. So I've had 2 residents, one in person and one through just a quick message, give positive feedback on the new bridge in Four Seasons. So I think it's important when we get that feedback to bring that forward. Another group. I'm involved in scouting in Beaumont, and there's a badge in the Beaver section. It's called the Northern Lights badge, and as part of that, you have to take on some individual projects. Beavers is for 4 to 7-year-olds. We had a 7-year-old who took on a project of cleaning parks and wanted to go out and clean the parks. And the leader that was working with him on that was very happy to report he found very little trash. And the leader at our planning meeting said, kudos to the town, please, for that. So I think it's important to bring that forward and just say kudos for that. So thank you.
Very much. Okay, popping back up. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, and sorry about having that ready when I needed it. But basically, I do think that other councillors may have seen this already as well, but it's a conference coming up in our region at the Coast Nisku Inn on growing from here, an ag food business conference. I wanted to make sure that councillors and staff and economic development in particular are aware of it, and it looks to me like something that we might maybe want to consider sponsoring, because I see Leduc County and the City of Leduc are sponsoring that as well. So I'll pass it on to the administration if that's okay, but I wanted council to know it's coming up quick, and I imagine these spots are going to fill up. So just wanted to let you know about that.
No, fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 11A, correspondence. Another good news item for the town. The Minister of Municipal Affairs, our own MLA Shay Anderson, has signed off on the letter recommending to the cabinet that we become a city, and so that will be heading to cabinet this fall, and we will see where we land. Hopefully we'll still be able to hit our January 1st 2019 date and moving forward. So yeah, the process is moving, and it's another good news stories. Can I get a motion to accept this letter as information, please? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Oh, happy to accept this as information.
Thank you very much. Oops. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Which brings us to our no in-camera items. Are there any notice of motion tonight? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.